We'll go ahead and use the C2 value variable now. On line 53, every time we loop through this outermost loop using the I2 placeholder, we decide whether or not the element that it's currently iterating as I2 in the OA temps array is going to be a bad or a good OA temp sensor. So if this check here has determined that it is a bad sensor or a bad sensor value, it gets singled out. And if this and if if it occurs more than twice, we basically have to add it to an array that is the ultimate list of the sensors that are bad. And so realize that we are not passing this list a bad temperature sensor at this point or a standard deviation value. We're actually passing it the index number of the bad sensor in the OA temps list array. And this happens only if we've determined that we have had this OA temp sensor that this index refers to in the OA temps list of sensors. If we've determined that this sensor has been singled out or flagged out to be different than one of its peers more than twice. So at that point, the index referencing that sensor element in the list of OA temps gets assigned to the list of dev items so that it can later be referenced and mapped out to an OA temp sensor in that list. So let's continue on. Next thing we're gonna do is compute the we're gonna test every sample against every element in the list of deviation items, so that we can remove them from the ultimate computation, which in this case will be an average. So in order to do that, we'll have to create a handful of local variables. We should also declare them here. Alright, so line 72, average OA temp hasn't been declared yet. So average OA temp will be actually our one of our two numeric outputs. Should clear out now. And, okay, so here we basically say we're gonna loop, so t is 0, we're gonna loop through t from 1 to 10, and then we're gonna take t at the first iteration of this loop at element number 1, and we're gonna say in element number 1 of the deviation list of items, do I have a different value than 1? Now if I have a 1 here, that means that up here we found that the OA temps element number 1 sensor was found to be bad. So we would have had assigned here a 1 to this list that we're querying here in this other loop. Now if this had not happened on element number 1 and OA temp sensor number 1 was good, then we should have a 0 here. Now realize that one thing is to pass the index, which is an integer number, from 1 to 10, because that's how long the array is, that's how many elements it has. And another thing is to actually use that index number as a reference in the list so that you can query an element inside this list. Now these are two different uses of a variable, right? Now in this case we're assigning the integer number of the index. In this case we're using that index, that integer number stored in this index variable or placeholder variable, we're using it inside the square brackets to reference the element indexed under that number inside this list or array. So if basically I2 does not get assigned to deviation items, then at element number 1 of the deviation items array, we're going to have a 0. So if we have anything other than a 0, this for loop is going to catch it, and it's going to say, yeah, it's true. I'm iterating through the third element of OA temps. Actually, I'm iterating through the third element of this loop, not even OA temps, just this loop. And at the third element of the deviation items, I do have a 3. Then that means that here, the third element of OA temps had a bad sensor and it got assigned to deviation items. So in any case, if this is true because we don't have a 3 in deviation items, at 3 we have a 0, then we want to count it. So we take count, which starts at 0, and then we add 1 to it. Then the next time this loops back around, count's already gonna have 1. Because remember, we're in a for loop here. We haven't gone down to the last line of the program and then gone back up to come back down, where this would have zeroed out again. We're still running in this little for loop here. So now count has 1 in it. We come back around, this whole works out. Now count's gonna have 2. Same thing goes for the total. The total starts at 0, but as long as we're looping in here, and we keep adding the total of the temperature sensor samples, we keep adding samples to this total, well, as long as we don't get out of the for loop, hit the bottom of the program, get back to the top, and get back to this line 66, total is going to continue to store the last value or the sum of these values, right? So this is how you can do your sums, your accumulated sums. So anyway, at this point we finished going through the list of samples. We dished out all the ones that are no good, and then we go ahead and we do an average outside air temperature calculation, and we pass it to average OA temp, which we've declared up here as an output. So now, just to see to a comparison here, we'll go ahead and just do a raw average. So we'll zero this guy out. Okay, so now all that we've got left to do is test this program and go through it and analyze it as we test it.